morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection to order. We have a slate of governor's messages this morning. And to put the messages in context, I just wanted to refresh everyone's memory as to the board that these nominees are being appointed to. It was created pursuant to Act 205 from last year's legislature. The purpose of the exchange is to facilitate the purchase and sale of qualified plans and qualified dental plans, connecting consumers to the information necessary to make informed healthcare choices about those plans, establishing enabling consumers to purchase coverage and manage health and dental plans electronically, to be a clearinghouse for information on all qualified plans and qualified dental plans. And it notes that the board of directors, the membership shall reflect geographic diversity and the diverse interest of stakeholders, including consumers, employers, insurers, and dental health providers. The Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs or the Director's designee, the Director of Health or the Director's designee, the Director of Human Service or Director's designee, and the Director of Labor and Industrial Relations or the Director's designee shall be ex officio voting members of the board. Other important aspects to note: it is the Commissioner of Insurance that shall determine the eligibility for inclusion of insurers and plans, provided that all qualified plans and qualified dental plans that apply for inclusion shall be included in the connector. The oversight and rate regulation: the Commissioner, the Insurance Commissioner, a state employee, shall retain full regulatory jurisdiction pursuant to the authority granted to the Commissioner by Part 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 431, that's Hawaii Revised Statutes, over all insurers and qualified plans and qualified dental plans included in the connector. Rate regulation for qualified plans and qualified dental plans included in the connector shall be pursuant to applicable state and federal law. The connector has no regulatory authority in this arena. And there are some other aspects about how the interim board acts and the executive director. But with that overview of the purpose of the connector and how it shall operate, the chair will begin to go down the agenda. The way the chair operates her governor's message hearings, we do it like bills. We take each governor's message in turn. We run down the list of individuals that have submitted testimony. We ask if there are others. We call the nominee up. We discuss whatever issues the committee wants to discuss with the nominee, and we move on to the next nominee. At the end of the hearing, if it is the committee's desire, we will take a vote to advise and consent. The first governor's message is Governor's Message 618, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector gubernatorial nominee Sherry Minor McNamara for a term to expire 6/30/2015. We have Nestor Garcia in support, Shelley Wilson Home Care in support, Jim Tollefson, President of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, in support, Benjamin Godsees, Pro Service Hawaii, in support, Vivian Landrum, Konokohala Chamber of Commerce, in support, Alicia Maluafiti, Hawaii Crop Improvement Association, in support. Keith Nagata, First Hawaiian Bank, in support. Lisa Maruyama of Hano, in support. Michael Robinson, Hawaii Pacific Health, in support. Sherry Ann Lau Clark, Hawaii Employers Council, in support. Gladys Marone, BIA Hawaii, in support. George Green, Healthcare Association of Hawaii, in support. Alan Takimoto, Monsanto Company, Hawaii, in support. Craig Kennedy, McCabe, Hamilton and Rennie Company, in support. Matthew Delaney, Hawaii Group, or HI Group rather, in support. Virginia Pressler, Hawaii Pacific Health, in support. Lauren Zerbel, LSZ Consulting, in support. Roy Amamiya, Community Media, in support. Bernie Coldman, Pacific Allied Products, in support. Tom Masterson, Global Momentum Team, in support. Signe Godfrey, Olston, support. John Norek, support. Gary Kai, Hawaii Business Roundtable, support. Dean Uchida, SSFM International. Myung Oh, in support. Audrey Hidano, in support. Victor Lim, in support. Barbara Polk, Americans for Democratic Action, in opposition. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this governor's message? Yes, Janine. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? If not, I invite the nominee to come forward. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning, Chair.
If you could share a little bit with the commission, or the committee rather, about your background and interest in serving on the board and the qualifications that you bring to this service.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to consider the nomination. Excuse me.
Yeah, you might want to speak into the microphone just a little bit closer.
I mean, it was all right. I'm on sort of a cold, so my voice might be a little coarse. But I've had the unique opportunity to serve on the Health Insurance Exchange Task Force created by the Insurance Commissioner of DCCA, and I'm currently serving as chair of the interim board of the Health Connector. It will be an honor to continue to serve as we continue to achieve critical steps toward the creation of Hawaii's Health Insurance Exchange. Moreover, I want to continue the important public service to ensure that the exchange is established and that the state of Hawaii is in full compliance and accomplishes the requirements of the Affordable Care Act. The board will be responsible to uphold the vision and mission and to create a successful connector website that will provide users with a comprehensive and easy shopping experience, and to ensure that the people of our great state will live happier and healthier lives by making quality health insurance accessible to all. This is a position and responsibility I take seriously, and once again, it will be an honor to be part of a team that will continue to work effectively together to ensure the creation and execution of a successful exchange and to fulfill the vision and mission statement of the exchange as well as the Affordable Care Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Minor McNamara?
Yes, questions.
Senator Sloan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator.
You are the business representative, or a business representative on the panel.
Yes, I am.
Are you concerned about the lack of transparency that will occur after July with the panel when it becomes a private nonprofit?
We will continue to operate with transparency as stated in Act 205, and as resources become available, we will ensure that the members of the public will have continued access to different resources so that they can easily obtain information from the connector.
But you will not be subject to the Sunshine Law, Chapter 92, is that correct?
Once again, we will act with transparency. And
No, I understand.
Yes.
Will you be subject to Act 92, or HRS 92?
He came out ruling that we are not. However, with that said, the board had recognized from early on that we will operate with transparency, extent possible, and moving forward, as once again, as the resources become available, we'll make sure that the information that we come out with will become easily accessible.
And are you secure that the nominees on this panel represent a broad and diversified cross-section of the community?
Act 205 has states what kind of representation should be had on the board, and it's important to have the different stakeholders' interests represented on the board because of the various expertise that they
I know, but I'm asking your opinion. Are you, pardon me?
We're just following the spirit of the law, Act 205, and we're here to establish a successful exchange.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sherry? If not, thank you very much. Our next governor's message is 620, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector, gubernatorial nominee Robert Hirokawa for a term to expire 6/30/2014. We have a number of testimonies in behalf of Mr. Hirokawa. We have Alan Johnson, Hinamauka, in support, George Green, Healthcare Association of Hawaii, in support, and Hawaii Primary Care Association in support. Is there anyone else here wishing to offer comment on Governor's Message 620? Members, I regret to inform you that Mr. Hirokawa had a prior commitment. This time every year, the members of the Hawaii Primary Care Association converge in Washington, D.C. to meet with our congressional delegation, and it was something that he needed to do as the executive director or the CEO of the Hawaii Primary Care Association. Chair had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Hirokawa. He's eminently qualified for his service and has been participating in the interim board. And so Chair regretted that he would not be able to be with us, but I think his testimony and support, as well as his personal statement and biography, will give the committee comfort that he is indeed qualified. And so at the appropriate time, the chair will be recommending that we advise and consent to his nomination. Our next governor's message is 621, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector gubernatorial nominee, Mr. Clifford Alakai, for a term to expire 6/30/2016. Mr. Alakai is from Maui and has testimony and support from Len McNeff, CEO of Maui Economic Opportunity, Tom Battisto and Associates, Wesley Lowe, Maui Memorial Medical Center, Andy Anchetta, American Medical Response, Cindy Yee, Acuity LLP. Is there anyone else here wishing to offer comment on Governor's Message 621? If not, Clifford, if you would come forward. Good morning. If you could,
excuse me.
if you could take just a minute and share a little bit of your background, your interest in serving on the connector, and the qualities that you bring to the board.
Well, thank you. First of all, I was surprisingly nominated initially for the interim board. Thanks, Senator, for the nomination and an appointment by the governor and then reappointment by the governor. So I'm thankful and honored that the governor felt it was worthy to keep me back on the Health Connector. I did submit a letter. I don't know if all the senators got it, but I'll just run through the main parts. Currently, I serve as the treasurer for the interim board. My background is accounting. I was a certified public accountant. My license is currently inactive, but I helped the connector with financial, and I'm helping right now putting the financials and getting the accounting systems up and running. Prior to working at the Maui Medical Group, I was at Coopers and Lybrand on Oahu and on Maui, and now I'm with Maui Medical Group, a physician-owned multi-specialty group. And what I bring to the connector is a good understanding of healthcare, working with patients, providers of healthcare insurance companies, hospitals, participation in the purchasing of healthcare insurance, for the Maui Medical Group employees. I'm actively involved in that. Accounting background gives me an opportunity to understand. I also thought it was really a good idea to have representation from the neighbor islands. Oftentimes, us that live on the neighbor island don't feel we get as much participation in things that occur in Honolulu. And I'm glad that myself, as well as Mike from the Big Island, is able to participate in this process. I think that we provide a unique insight from a neighbor island perspective where things are a little bit different in Honolulu. So anything else, that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Cliff. Members, any questions for Mr. Alakai?
Yes.
Senator
Thank
Sloan?
you. Yes, good morning, Mr. Alakai. I'll ask you the same questions that I intend to ask all the nominees. Do you have any problem with the fact that there will be less transparency after July of this board?
The board, we've talked about it. The board is really intended to keep the community involved. How we keep them involved, we haven't figured it out. For the last 6 months that we've created the connector, we've been rushing as hard as we can to get the connector up and running because we have a deadline and trying to get the infrastructure in place. We're going to have to come back around and pull more community, get the word out more. The chair, which Sherry, has recognized that we need to do that. But we've been so busy trying to get the connector up and running, getting monies transferred from the state and getting our bills paid timely. It's been really a challenge, and that's what the connector has spent a lot of time working on.
There's a lot of opposition because of perceived or alleged conflict of interest, people having financial interests who have been appointed or nominated to the board. How would you address that?
Well, I know, I think you're referring to the HMSA, the Kaisers, and some of the health plans, not me in particular. I've worked with both organizations over the last 6 months, and I've not seen any conflict of interest come up. Coming from an accounting background, appearance of a lack of conflict of interest is critical, and I view my decisions in that fashion as an accountant, and I haven't seen any issues. There's not enough of them on the board to sway the board in one way. What I was really impressed with, the original interim board was very well put together, and whoever drafted the legislation did an excellent job. And I'm actually rather impressed with the diversity of people that sit on our organization, because they're from so many different walks of life and different industries that I don't normally interact with them. So I don't see an issue. I haven't seen an issue yet. I know there was some question about risk pools, and I talked to the chair, Sherry, and we're going to have to revisit it again and figure it out to make sure we're moving in the right direction. And we're also going to put a lot of reliance on the insurance commissioner. That's his area of expertise. Our goal is to get the connector up and running.
Thank you. And finally, your involvement with Maui Memorial. Were you involved in any way with the efforts to deny a private competitive hospital on Maui?
Oh, I'm at Maui Medical Group.
Yes.
Okay, so Maui Memorial Hospital is a separate entity.
So you weren't involved in that?
I can explain. Way back when Maui Medical Group, the board of directors, did issue a letter of support to Maui Memorial Hospital. That is correct. Looking at it today, and the reason we did that is having one place to focus our healthcare. We felt it was important because our doctors, currently we have 70 healthcare providers that provide care for the people of Maui, and having one, we were afraid of a stratification of the healthcare where the haves would go to one hospital and the have-nots would go to another, and we were afraid of that, and having one place to focus. I gotta admit that sometimes the board, we sit and we say, did we really back the right horse? Because sometimes we run into headaches with Maui Memorial, but Weslow and his team has been tremendously helpful to us, and he actually did send a letter of support. We work with them constantly. They're the only hospital on the island. Our physicians work hand in hand with them, and we have a very good working relationship with them. And we try to work with community clinic. I should have asked the community clinic for a letter of recommendation. I didn't think I needed that much, but we work very closely with them, and we cross cover. So, yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Mr. Alakai. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions? If not,
I have a question.
Yes.
certainly.
As a follow-up to the senators, don't you folks have any kind of, do you go with any rules in terms of how you declare conflict?
Are you referring to the board of directors?
Yes, the board of directors.
We recently approved a conflict statement
Right.
that was drafted from our attorney, and we did provide that after our last meeting was approved. It's a pretty straightforward
Right.
statement. I don't know if you've seen it, but it has steps on how you're supposed to take to declare your conflict. Did I
And
answer
you're
your question?
comfortable with that? Are you comfortable
Yeah,
with that? You
yeah.
think it's reasonable and
Yeah.
it's workable and, you know, and people are straightforward with it and so on?
I haven't seen anybody in any of the meetings that I've attended. I've attended all the board meetings, except maybe one, that have exhibited a conflict
Right.
of interest. And we have enough other people in the community from the state side,
Right.
you know, that really help us, you know,
Balance.
yeah, it's really not easy. I mean, you know, we bring up a question, and Department of Labor raises their hand and say, you know, department, and we're like, oh, okay, we didn't think about that. So, you know, we're trying to weave our way, and we're, you know, the expression I like to use is we're breaking trail, because this is new to everybody. It's not like you can go someplace and say, you know, it's been running for 20 years. Nothing like it. So we've got a
Okay.
good board. I like the board. We have good people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Olicati.
Okay, thank you.
Our next governor's message is 622, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector, gubernatorial nominee Gwen Rulona, for a term to expire 6/30/2014. We have testimony and support from the ILW. Ms. Rulona is one of the staff for the United Food and Commercial Workers. So she's a labor representative of sorts. She's actively giving back to her community today with effort that they had at Aloha United Way, and is not able to be with us. But I had opportunity to visit with her, and I know she's very interested in serving on the board and very interested in contributing, looking at this as a way to give back. So members, I explained to Ms. Rulona that because she had an opportunity to visit with me and had an opportunity to share with others, that we would not hold it against her because she had a prior commitment. These hearings are done at the legislature's timetable and not necessarily the individual members. So members, when we do get to the point in our discussion for advise and consent, Chair will be recommending that we advise and consent to Ms. Rulona's nomination. The next governor's message is Governor's Message 623, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector, gubernatorial nominee Christine Sakuda, for a term to expire 6/30/2015. We have testimony in behalf of Ms. Sakuda, who happens to be the Executive Director of the Hawaii Information Exchange and has some knowledgeable background to share. We have testimony and support from the Healthcare Association of Hawaii. Is there anyone else here wishing to offer testimony on Governor's Message 623? If not, Ms. Sakuda, if you would please join us at the table and share with the committee a little bit about your background and your interest in serving on the connector and the qualities that you bring to the board.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Christine Sakuda, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hawaii Health Information Exchange. It's a nonprofit organization, and it has a big board, a 21-member board from diverse members of the community. And we work in the road of supporting different healthcare initiatives through technology. We help provide technical assistance to physicians in their adoption of electronic health records. And we also help and strive the physician and provider community to connect over a secure health information exchange. I have been on the interim board of the Hawaii Health Connector. It's been my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity to serve on the board. I echo a previous board member's sentiment that it's been fast and furious trying to understand the regulations, the legislation that really govern the Hawaii Health Connector. with voluminous amounts of information, and we do have gotten good support and have really started from the ground up, fast and furious. So it's been my pleasure to serve as interim director. And what I feel I bring to the Health Connector is my background in health information technology. It is one of the goals of the Connector to develop a infrastructure, a web portal to support the activity that rides on top of that. And that is the area of expertise that I bring, in addition to having worked for a nonprofit for many years. And thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Christine. Members, any questions for Ms. Sakuda? Senator Sloan.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for serving. You've served on several nonprofits, private nonprofits in the community. Do you see any similarities or difference with this becoming a nonprofit?
Well, the similarity is that there is a diverse group of members on the board. It is always a challenge to be as inclusive as possible and not have your board be 50 members or 100 members, and it's very difficult to operate that way. And I think based off of my experience from the boards that I've served on, they've gone through constant evolutions. Some board members have come and gone depending on the maturity of the organization, from the startup to operating and then to sustaining the organization. And so I have benefited from being on nonprofit boards that have a diverse group of stakeholders. Conflict of interest has come into play. I think it's imperative to have a strong, not only a strong conflict of interest policy, but strong policies that really support and implement that. Going back and revisit the conflicts, making sure that as the board and the organizations continue to operate, that we go back and make sure that the right checks and balances are in place.
But aside from the diversity, is there not a difference between this as a governmental agency?
Well, I do think that the relationship between the Connector and the government require it to have a increased transparency and responsibility to do the public good. Nonprofits have that as well, but I think that the added relationship that this nonprofit has to the state makes it unique. Personally, I'm still learning about what the nature of that relationship is. I find it fascinating and interesting. So.
But everybody's talking about transparency and everybody's quoting Act 205, but the fact of the matter is this board and this organization in July will be exempt from the Sunshine Law. So you don't find that a problem or troubling?
I think it's the burden on the nonprofit organization to make sure that it does its due diligence, and the fact that the board meetings are open, it has the oversight of DCCA, it has checks and balances in place. I can't speak to if that's the perfect system for the organization, but I do think that the transparency is important, and I do think that given the community input and again the relationship with the state, that will continue to manifest itself in the governance of the organization.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Senator Galatario.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Sakuda, thank you for stepping up. There have been, and we will be speaking to some shortly, who have garnered opposition to their appointments here because of their perceived conflicts of interest. And 3 of them. I think it's going to be incumbent on the 12 remaining to call them on this, if indeed they do make it through this process. How do you address this type of opposition? Do you come to the table as a health professional before you come to the table as a specific employee of a company? How do you do it personally? Because it drives to the very heart of the integrity of the appointee.
What the board's all about.
I believe it's my fiduciary responsibility as an individual to make sure that the board operates in the best way possible to serve the members of the community. I do work for the Hawaii Health Information Exchange. The organizations that all of the board members represent, or not in the case of some of the community members, add into that dynamic. But I do think, first and foremost, it's my fiduciary responsibility as a board member to make sure that I do my job in serving as best as I can and supporting the operating principles of the board. So that means that if there are any, if there's a perception of a conflict of interest by one board member at one situation or another, then it is our responsibility as individuals to raise that as, to the board and address it collectively.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question, Madam Chairman.
Certainly. Senator Solomon?
So, coming from your perspective, what do you see as the common thread, like, on your board? We've mentioned that they come all from these diverse backgrounds, so on and so forth. So in terms of, as it relates to healthcare, what is the common thread, as you folks have been fast and furious and trying to get everything put together?
I think one of the common threads is, to the point of agony, the board members really are striving to do the best job possible with the information that they have, and the constraints of time and lack of financial resources, actually. It's most of the work that has happened in the absence of an executive director, has happened in the absence of funding, and everyone is really supports each other in getting everyone's knowledge up to speed on interpreting the federal law, understanding it, and adjusting it as we continue to move on. So I think that's one of the positive aspects that have come out of this activity.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Our next governor's message is Governor's Message 624. Submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector, gubernatorial nominee Joan Danley, for a term to expire 6/30/2015. We have testimony in support from Frank Richardson, Kaiser Permanente, Tim Louis Kwan, Carl Smith Ball, Robert Toyofuku, Ellen Godby Carson, Rights of Consumer Consortium in opposition, Larry Geller in opposition, AARP in opposition, Barbara Polk in opposition, Gail Brakey, Progressive Democrats of Hawaii, opposition, Janet Mason, League of Women Voters, opposition, Mary Wagner, Casey Hughes, Barbara Service, Fritz Frischel in opposition, late testimony from Beverly Keever in opposition. Is there anybody else wishing to offer comment on this governor's message? If not, Ms. Danley, would you please join us at the table? And if you could share with us the information that we've requested of the other nominees, to give us a little bit of your background and your interest in serving on the board.
Great, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Joan Daniely, and I served on the task force that was originally put together by the insurance commissioner, and then I served on the interim board, and I appreciate the opportunity that I've had to serve on both of those. They have both been phenomenally learning experiences, and we've all worked together and have found, as you mentioned, those common threads of how we work together for the mission and the obligations of the connector. My background is really in health plan operations. I am Vice President for Health Plan Administration at Kaiser, and my previous background is also in health plan administration and health plan operations. Now, I think what I bring to this board is unique, and it is important for what we're trying to accomplish. Because with my operational background, I have experience, first of all, in setting up a startup health plan, and that's really what we're doing here. This is a startup organization. as well as experience with enrollment, premium billing, all of those are my responsibilities, claims payment, call centers, customer service, health plan systems, and payment policies and network contracting. So these are operational, roll up your sleeves, get the work done, background that I think would be very valuable and tremendously aligns with what we're trying to accomplish at the connector. You know, we've accomplished a lot to date, and as they've testified before me, that it has been fast and furious. I'm proud of what we have accomplished, and I think we're going to do good things for this community. We have a unique opportunity that's been given to us by healthcare reform and by the establishment of exchanges in our state. And with that unique opportunity comes an obligation and specific performance that is required. And I'm committed to the mission of the connector and to using my skills to accomplish its goals.
Thank you. Members' questions? Senator Sloan?
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Daniely.
Good morning.
Okay, here we are.
I'm the first one.
You're the first one. All right, so how do you answer the question about conflict of interest?
We have a conflict of interest policy, and I will absolutely abide by that policy. And the members of the board should call anyone to task if they feel like you have a conflict on anything that comes up. Most of what will be happening in the board and in the exchange is execution. So we're not a regulatory body that's making any rules. Most of it will be execution, but anywhere that there is a conflict, I will recuse myself per that policy.
Have you had an opportunity to talk to any of the people that are very concerned about their perceived conflict? Have you talked to them at all, either individuals or organizations?
I've not talked to the people that are here today. I spoke with Primary Care Association, who had expressed some interest in the conflict of interest policy a while back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you do understand, it's one thing to have a conflict of interest policy. Mm-hmm. It's another thing, however, to look at the composition of the board that's already there. Mm-hmm. So actually, it's among yourselves, and it's the camaraderie of the board and so forth. So. That's one thing. And the other question that I've asked everyone, do you have any discomfort at all with the fact that the board and the organization will no longer be subject to the sunshine laws after July?
I do not. We have a board that's committed to the mission, and part of that mission, and ultimately the foundation of the mission, is to serve the consumer. So we will continue to have public meetings. We're actually putting up a website now that's going to have all of the meeting schedules, as well as the minutes and our policies and our conflict of interest policy. All of that should be available soon on our website. And that's the resources they were talking about earlier, bringing those resources to bear. So I think it will be transparent. That is certainly my goal. That is the goal of my fellow board members. And I think you can count on us to make it very transparent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Gualtieri?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We're looking at the potential fallback positions because of the conflict of interest questions that you're having to deal with. I want to know what you bring to the connector board that nobody else does. There are issues here that are important for us to learn, because the consumer is the final stop for us. So what do you bring besides conflict of interest question to this table that we can say is separate from everybody else?
What I bring that is unique and very important to the connector, since the connector's main obligation is to execute, is that I have a successful track record of building and executing an operation. So I understand things like setting up a system that's going to do enrollment of people through the exchange, of setting up a system that will do the premium billing, of the interconnectivity between the exchange and the various health plans or other organizations is going to have to be connected to Medicaid. There is system connectivities. That's all experience that I have, and I've successfully done a startup health plan. So this is a startup organization. So I bring operational skills and knowledge that will be very important for us meeting our deadline successfully.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Stanley.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Baker, you didn't ask
Good
if any
job.
of us who had submitted.
Opposition.
Well, actually, we have all of the written testimony, and unless there is something additional that needs to be added, we have it, and I expect people to stand on their testimony. I didn't see any people pop up before I came. So we'll just go forward. If I will call you, if there's others that you wanted, because all of your testimony for all of the ones is very similar, but I'll be happy to entertain the ones that we have on the record if people want to make it as we go forward. Thank you.
Senator, I had a question.
You don't get to ask questions of the nominees. That's the committee's responsibility. So thank you very much. Our next governor's message is Governor's Message 625, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of Hawaii Health Connector gubernatorial nominee Jennifer Deesman for a term to expire 6/30/2014. We have testimony in support from Robbie Alm, Hawaiian Electric, Timothy Johns, HMSA, Alan Johnson, Hina Malka, Emmett White, Arcadia, Gary Kai, all of these in support. Hawaii Business Roundtable, George Green, Healthcare Association of Hawaii, Alfred Fortin, Joanne Yoshimura, Ken Hiraki, Jan Harada, Helping Hands in support, Gregory Swinaga, Hawaii Health Information Exchange in support, Trini Kaupuike Clark in support, Rights of Consumer Consortium, opposition, Larry Geller, opposition. Yes, Mr. Geller? All right. We have your written testimony.
Yes, my name is Larry Geller. I'm president of Kukua Council. Yes, you have my written testimony, but things have changed very quickly, including overnight. There's an amendment to SB 2434, and I also received a memo opinion from OIP confirming that the interim board and also the permanent board are not subject to the Sunshine Law. And OIP, therefore, did not go on to evaluate the second part of my inquiry, which was that their agendas are inadequate public notice and their meeting places and so forth do not conform to what we know as the Sunshine Law and do not provide adequate access to the public. So in other words, OIP did not comment on their agenda. But it remains a concern, and it's a concern of my testimony and my organization. Let me say that this connector is exceedingly important to us because people of Hawaii will be, the people without insurance policies will be purchasing insurance based upon what this group sets up. It's an incredible responsibility. And we've already seen some problems along the way. For example, a split pool, which disadvantages individual consumers and favors larger organizations. That's the way it has been in Hawaii for standard insurance, and the way it is today, that a large organization can negotiate a better rate, and the rest pay more. But let me be specific. The work is not to design a website. The work is to do the best job possible for the consumer. Now, my testimony, I won't be testifying for all three. It is a similar testimony. It's based not on the individuals or their capabilities. It's based on what I believe is the impossibility of separating out a long-term job function from your service on a board. And now in the case of Jennifer Deesman, she's a well-known lobbyist, a skilled lobbyist, and she appears before the committees of the legislature constantly on behalf of HMSA. And there is a natural tension between any insurer and consumer groups. It just the way things are. You know, the insurer wants one thing, the consumers want another. So it's not surprising that I'm here today in opposition to the appointment. And I do, by the way, have great personal respect for Jennifer Diesman. I've sat in many, many committee meetings as she lobbies on behalf of HMSA. So, let me, I'm going to end my testimony in a moment, but I do want to say that Hawaii, our concerns are magnified because Hawaii is unique in a couple of ways. This is the only nonprofit corporation that any state has set up to handle this task. And it operates, therefore, outside of not only the Sunshine Law, but the ethics laws and any other law that might apply to a board or commission. I think we've been emphasizing the sunshine aspect, but the ethics laws, I think, are in a similar situation. So we've left the board to create its own conflict of interest policy. Now, that's very strange because those with the conflict of interest will be setting the conflict of interest policy. The other, this is one of the complications of the way it is set up. It is no fault of the individual nominees. The other aspect, well, 21 states altogether, 6 states have prohibited insurers from serving on the boards. They've already done this. Hawaii, what the consumer groups are asking is not unusual at all. 6 states have already made that kind of a ruling. And a total of 21 states, that means 15 states more are in some stage of considering doing, restricting the conflict of interest. And I think that would result in at least some of them, safe to assume, some of them would follow that.
Thank you, Mr. Geller.
Yeah. This morning's newspaper suggests that the whole thing be redone. So,
that's not currently on the table before this committee.
Well, the nomination is.
Yes.
And so I urge you to keep in mind that what you're being asked to do is not a bunch of upstart consumer groups. It may be the mainstream argument with how this this connector will operate in the public interest. Thank you for your consideration.
Senator, can I just speak to my testimony?
No,
My testimony?
you have not been called, Ms. Harbin. Please sit down. You have not been called.
I have been.
No, I'm going next to.
I am the executive director of the Rights of Consumer Consortium, and you ran right past it before I could stand up and just.
I'll come back to you, but I'm going to run the rest of the list first.
Okay, so we will have a chance.
You will have a chance to speak, and I expect everybody in the room to testify with aloha and to be respectful.
Thank you.
We have Americans for, AARP.
I'm going to ask her.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It really gives me no pleasure at all to be telling you this, but I think that we need to share with the Senate the situation as to why this is an untenable situation at the Connector Board firsthand. The reason why you see so many consumer groups here has been it's a symptom of how difficult it is to be heard on that Connector Board. We have been told time and time again that we're really busy, we have deadlines, and there really is no ability to make meaningful comment or to participate. The consumers have really been shut out, just plain and simple. And what the board has relied on is that we're following Act 205. And I recognize it's the law, but what we're saying is that this law is flawed, and let us correct it. And so to name the nominees based on a flawed law, we think is a mistake. We say give it a hold back and give the legislation an opportunity to move through the session and have the consumer groups speak up. They will tell you why it's so hard to get heard on the Connector Board. Consumers, when they are asked to participate, primarily have been said, they say, well, you could be on an advisory committee without a vote, but we don't have to listen to your recommendations. And the consumers pretty much are treated as second-class citizens. And I think what the Connector Board and everyone needs to realize is the Connector board and this whole health insurance exchange is all about the consumer. This is about the uninsured consumer. This is about the most vulnerable of our population. Ultimately, it's the consumer who's the customer of the exchange, and yet they're the voice that's not there. When we have asked about,
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, are you speaking in opposition to the nominee?
I'm sorry, in opposition of the conflict of interest.
Well,
for
we
the
actually
insurers.
have nominees, and the bill that you're referencing is not before the
Yes.
committee.
That's
Okay,
why I get
thank you.
And
confused.
to
Yeah.
say that, that there are no consumers on the board is incorrect, Ms. Stanton. So if you want to make your point, which I think you
Okay.
have, that you're opposed to the nominees that happen to have employers as insurers, then state that, and then we'll move on.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We are in opposition of the 3 insurers and serving on the board because the kinds of decisions that will be made on the board will greatly impact. They will then be in the role of competing for these customer accounts. And although it's said that this is just it's like a website, a marketplace, there are critical decisions that are made in the construct. Whether you're going to, what you're going to do about the risk pools, how are you going to do the outreach? There's just so many details that will determine who's successful and who's not when those plans finally get on the connector. So I don't know how people separate the two. I know that the federal government has a floor, but we say Hawaii should be stronger in terms of following the consumer. So I
Thank you, Barbara.
appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Americans for Democratic Action.
Yes.
Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. Chair Baker, Vice Chair Hanaguchi. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I won't go through all my testimony. Much of it's been said by other people. I did want to deal with a couple of things, one of them having to do with the conflict of interest. And the problem with the conflict of interest policy that they passed is that it is an extremely narrow policy. It's one that basically deals with individual financial interests only with respect to, let's see, agreements and awarding of contracts, but not with respect to the kinds of decisions that these boards have, that the board has to make. So we're very concerned about that. We're also concerned about the way in which that conflict of interest policy was passed. I've read the board minutes, and they passed the policy, and then they had an opportunity for public input after it was too late. And this apparently is the way the board's been operating, which is why we're concerned about the transparency on the board. One other thing I'd like to mention is that Mr. Nakai said that they may need to revisit things like the pooling of the groups, the risk pools. The interim board has proposed to the legislature, and it's moving through the legislature, moved through the Senate, something that would embed that in law, so they would not be able to reconsider that. So it's not clear that, in fact, the interim board was willing to reconsider those things. Thank you. So I'm opposing this appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Brakey. Good morning, Gail.
I'll be very, very brief, but I just wanted to say that the House has passed their version, their draft of the bill that designates how the board is constituted, and that it's
Ms.
somewhat.
Brakey, I'm going to say this one more time. The House bill, the Senate bill, the actions are not on the table before this committee right now. The only thing that I wish you to speak to, or anybody else, is the nominees, because that's what we're discussing.
I would just say that to speak to these nominees before that bill is settled is like putting the cart before the horse, because that bill suggests that the insurer representatives would be advisory. And I say this with due respect to this committee, and also with due respect to the nominees, because I'm sure they're very well qualified and good people. Thank you.
Janet Mason. League of Women Voters.
Good morning, Chair
Good
Baker
morning.
and Vice Chair Taniguchi, members of the committee. I'm Janet Mason. I'm Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. I'm representing our members throughout Hawaii. We have submitted testimony indicating that we do not think insurers or insurance producers should serve on this board because it is essentially a public market, and it is not appropriate to have companies who will be marketing the products operating the board in any way, participating in governance of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Wagner. Opposition. Casey Hughes. Opposition. Barbara Service. Opposition. T.J. Davis. Opposition. Fritz Fischel. Opposition. Ms. Harbin. And we do have your testimony.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I was kind of surprised you just brushed right over it. I'm the interim executive director for the Rights of Consumer Consortium. We're located.
Well, the reason I didn't know that it was you was because the address on this testimony is Mountain View, Hawaii.
Well, that is where I live.
I thought you lived on Oahu.
No.
Very good.
You've gotten rid of me. I'm on the Big Island.
I don't live on Oahu, so it doesn't matter to me where you are.
Okay, but anyway, I do live on the Big Island. We do have an organization which is housed on the Big Island. The people, and we also have members that are here on Oahu. I am just the interim executive director until someone who lives on Oahu, who can be more accessible to this body, is hired. Basically, we are very much against any nominations of the health insurers, especially this particular nominee. Just for the sake of credentialing myself, I am a former member of the Prepaid Healthcare Council. I was appointed to the council when the health insurers were removed by the governor and the legislature. And I will tell you from personal experience, in retrospect, some of the damage that was done at the Prepaid Healthcare Council, dealing with benefits, dealing with the prevailing plans, of which is HMSA and Kaiser, has made it very, very difficult to have competition in the prepaid healthcare market. So to put these insurers on another chance at competition and having a better, cheaper, more reasonable policy for the people of Hawaii and the small businesses that I represent is very bad policy. I would like to specifically have you look at my exhibit, which will show you that HMSA has 59% of the health insurance market. Their profits, according to public record, was something like $48 million. Hold on. I just want to say one thing. This is where the conflict comes from, the money. If this connector board goes forward and these insurers get 59% of the connector board funds, they tend to add another $176 million to their bottom line, and they are sitting in a position to make policy contrary to what is thought that they are not. They are.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll go back to the helo.
So many inaccuracies in that statement. There's no money changing hands out of the connector.
Aloha.
Yes, definitely aloha. We have, I have late testimony from Mr. Sword in support. We have also testimony in opposition from Beverly Kiever. And let's see, do we have your testimony, Mr. Del Castillo? Okay. Oh yes, I do have it. Please come forward. You do not need to read it, but sometimes, since you are an attorney, reading might be shorter than talking. So I would ask you to only comment on something that has not already been said.
I concur. I work daily on being concise, and in this
Very
particular
good.
case, what I would draw to the committee's attention is statements that the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight at the Department of Health and Human Services, which essentially has the assignment for the insurance exchanges, has posted on its website. And they are unequivocal in saying that the purpose of the exchanges is to create a marketplace in which consumers have choices, a competitive marketplace in which the rates for insurance will be driven down, and a marketplace in which small businesses will have purchasing power, and this is an amazing statement, purchasing power equal to that of their large business competitors. Those things are not in the interest of insurers. It's just the way things work as far as the way business is concerned. Increasing competition doesn't help existing businesses because it takes market share away from them potentially. And I'm sure you know that increasing the purchasing power or the power of small businesses to drive their rates down is also not something that the insurance companies relish. I believe these are the reasons why it's important for us to move the insurance industry into an advisory capacity for the valuable information that they have and out of voting positions on the board. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Del Castillo. I believe we've run the gamut of the folks who have expressed their concerns, and I would call to the table Ms. Diesman. So, Ms. Diesman, if you could share with the committee your interest in serving on the connector, your background, and what qualities you bring to advance the cause of the connector.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. I greatly appreciate this opportunity today. And I also appreciate the governor nominating me to this committee to serve. And many of you have known me over the years, and I have worked for HMSA for the past 13 years in a public policy capacity. So what I'd like to do is just take a minute to tell you a little bit about my background and sort of how I came into healthcare policy and why my interest is there. And I've been in Hawaii now for 16 years, and I grew up originally in New York City. And my parents ran a mom and pop business in printing, and we didn't have health insurance. And so I grew up without health insurance. And I remember going to the doctor when I was a little girl with my parents, bringing boxes of printing materials to the doctor because they were bartering in exchange for not having to pay for the doctor's visit. And so I came to public policy, and I came to wanting to do public administration and public service as a means of giving back and as a means of understanding what it was like as a child not to have those kinds of services readily available. I remember not getting braces because my parents couldn't afford braces. And that is why I sort of sought out healthcare policy issues both in Hawaii and when I lived in Wisconsin prior to this. And so what I see my role as being part of this organization is very much what President Obama envisioned, and that is to make healthcare simpler, more accessible, and more affordable. And I'm a very big proponent, as is HMSA, in trying to ensure that all individuals in the community have access to healthcare coverage. And I believe that the experiences I have had in public policy, both in Wisconsin and in Hawaii, provide me with the qualifications to be a good board member, an objective board member, and one that will help further the goals of the healthcare connector.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Sloan?
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Deisman. I think your experience and your involvement here predates a number of people on this panel. And at least you did get one kudo from one of the opponents, that you're a skilled lobbyist.
I'll take that back to my boss.
Yeah. The issue is brought up about the prepaid Healthcare Advisory Council, and as you know, I'm very familiar with that and have been involved with that, and found that to be detrimental, particularly to small businesses and consumers, because that council had the ability of saying thumbs up or thumbs down to new competitors in this marketplace, and mostly it was thumbs down. Do you see any similarities with this board and that council?
I think that you have to take into consideration the board's role, and the Affordable Care Act is a massive piece of legislation that the federal government put into place. And the exchange itself, the rules to operating a health insurance exchange, the rules themselves are 664 pages. They're very prescriptive. And one of the issues that keeps coming up today is around transparency. And the rules are also very prescriptive around transparency. With or without the Sunshine Law in Hawaii, you still have to abide by all the federal rules and regulations around being in, quote unquote, the sunshine. And so I think that the role of the board is to implement what's in statute and rule. And so I don't necessarily believe that there's that concern.
You mentioned the 600 pages of specific regulations. Of course, the Affordable Care Act is 2,700 pages. Do you know, did you and any members of the board, have you read through that whole act?
I have.
You have?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know of any of the board members that have? I see some shaking of heads.
I imagine some have.
Yeah. And so if you read through the 2,700 pages, which some of us that don't have a life do, you know that there's a lot of things in that act that, as a matter of fact, have negative consequences, not only to Hawaii, but particularly to groups like small businesses and like consumers. But still, you don't see any need for changing either that act or this particular legislation, Act 205?
I actually believe that given where Hawaii is, we're already ahead of the curve, much more ahead of the curve than many, many other states, even without the federal health care reform law. I think the greatest advantage to the federal law is that small businesses, in particular in Hawaii, will get tax breaks for already providing health care coverage to their employees, which they already can do today. So if you're a small business today with less than 25 employees today even, you now have the availability of a tax credit for something we were already doing. So I actually think that the Affordable Care Act is a good thing for the country and Hawaii.
You heard several nominees before say how frenetic the board was and they're rushing to do this and that, and then you heard opponents say that that's one of the problems, that they have not been able to gain access or had their issues talked about. What's your experience and what do you think about that?
Prior to the interim board being created, and I believe that was probably back in September or August maybe, there was a task force created as a result of Act 205, but really as a result of the state applying for the original planning grant monies that the federal government awarded. So the state applied, and DCCA, the insurance commissioner, was the applicant for a $1 million planning grant. As part of that planning grant, it created a task force, and that task force was extensive. There were lots of people who participated in that task force. All of those meetings were open. They were all public. The commissioner posted those notices on the lieutenant governor's website. I guess that's the standard policy. And there was a process. When the interim board was created by the governor, the insurance commissioner continued to follow that same process. So all of the hearings have been public, the meetings have been public, and the notices have been public, and there has been public participation. I think that the federal requirements and the timelines and the milestones are plentiful. They really are. There's a lot of work that has to be done. Now that the state, through the insurance division and the connector, have the actual, what they call a level 1 grant to start the actual implementation of the exchange, the $14 million that has come into the state to do this, you have lots of milestones that have to be met. And so, there was only 1 and then 2 staff people and then, a volunteer board who's really trying to implement all of that, along with a lot of assistance from the governor's office and a lot of the departments. And so I can understand the concerns that have been raised around not having enough information in a quick enough manner, but I also think that the board is committed to ensuring that and that the federal law requires it, and I'd be happy to provide you with the federal guidance that talks about the governance.
Well, I think it was more than concerns. They were saying basically that they didn't have access to the board, that the board was too busy. Finally, was the statement true that the code of conflict of interest was adopted first and then the public asked for comments?
The conflict of interest policy was adopted by the board, and then it was shared with the public, and the public was allowed to provide comments at the same meeting in which it was voted upon.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Senator Solomon?
Thank you so much. You know, I wanted to ask this question. The insurance commissioner had shared this information with me when we had chatted about the situation that we're actually in today in terms of health care. You know, whereas they've been looking at it over a 10-year span, whereas the wage has increased about 28%, you know, and the cost of living is up at 38%, and health care is up at 110%. So in your role on the board, and being that you're coming from your background of HMSA, and I just want to tell you, I fought HMSA for 20 years, so you just kind of know where I'm coming from.
Sure.
And the thing that my main concern about HMSA is I don't like the protection that they're getting under the Mutual Benefit Society. But that's a problem that we have to resolve in this House. That's not your kuleana. And I feel because of what is retained under your nonprofits, I think that a percentage of that retention should be factored into when you're coming up for rate increases. You know, now, to me, I think that all of that mana'o that I just shared with you is going to be part of what you're discussing there in your role as on the Health Connector. So, how are you going to balance all that out?
Sure.
That's the question. How are you going to balance all that?
Thank you, Senator. I think as a board member, as if I was serving on any other board, and I do serve on nonprofit boards, the fiduciary responsibility is to that organization and that entity, and ensuring that that entity sort of meets its goals and objectives, as well as ensures sustainability. I do think that one of the differences in terms of why I feel comfortable serving as a board member and still working for HMSA is that the way the legislature has set up this body, it is only to implement the decisions, the policies of the legislature and the governor. And the insurance commissioner still retains the regulatory authority with respect to the premium rates, reserves, who qualifies as a plan and who's eligible as a plan. That authority does not rest with the connector in any way. And so I view my role as helping to implement all of that policy in a meaningful way.
I guess if I may, Madam Chairman?
Sure.
Maybe I could rephrase the question. Okay. Although I appreciate all of what you have shared, I just want to say for the record that it's really been through the legislature that we have, through the Quest program, I had the privilege of serving as part of the original when we put the legislation together. In other words, the insurance companies, such as HMSA, such as Kaiser, such as those big insurers, have never really been in support of helping the government or the states come up with any kind of way to help provide insurance for the uninsured. So that's the question that I'm posing to you as a board member. I mean, would you be courageous enough to say to us, hey, you know, maybe we're part of the problem. Maybe HMSA is part of the problem. You know, maybe Kaiser's part of the problem. You know, because it took us, you know, when we did the whole no-fault insurance law, as well as we did, you know, I've been a part of all of this in here. So I've been here longer than, you know, in terms of my political involvement, you know, where we have done these original pieces of legislation because we so desired to have our people have adequate health care, no matter where you were. So we were kind of the forerunners in the country in terms of those kind of thoughts, okay? But the insurance companies never really helped us out. As a matter of fact, they were always our adversaries. You know, they were always on the opposite end of the table. So now why all of a sudden we have the Health Connector, and now all of a sudden you're in a situation now that you feel, hey, I can make a positive contribution. You know, are you willing, from your background or whatever, because that's your fiduciary duty now as a member of this board, to openly admit, hey, we're part of the problem. Are you willing to do that?
Thank you, Senator. I think that if I believed that, yes, I would be willing to do that. And I will tell you that one of the things I love about working for HMSA is that there is the freedom and the flexibility to speak your mind, and I don't necessarily have to sort of follow a party line, if you will. I would like to say, Senator, and I don't believe you were in the legislature at the time, but HMSA was very active in working with the legislature to create a program known as Keiki Care, which was to provide health insurance coverage to all the uninsured children in the state. And I was a part of creating that program. And so, you know, we have worked over the past several years, and to steal a governor's term, perhaps this is a new day for a health plan, but we have worked over the past several years to try to ensure that uninsured folks in this community, particularly children, have access to health care coverage, and we've been committed to that. And so, you know, I do view the role of the Health Connector as implementing your decisions, but in that capacity, part of that is, like I mentioned, making sure that people have adequate access to health care coverage so that we don't ever see a situation in our state where you do have haves and have-nots. I mean, we believe that everyone should have equal access to that type of service and coverage.
At an affordable cost.
At an affordable cost.
Okay.
But, and I agree, Senator, health care coverage has become increasingly expensive, and it's an unsustainable model.
Yes, it is.
And we are very much committed to working with the governor and the community and the Healthcare Transformation Council to try to solve some of those issues. And all I can do is commit to you that I will serve in a capacity that is with objectivity and empathy and sensitivity.
And I think that this is what the concern is.
Sure.
You know, because we come from this history, and there's a lot of these individuals sitting in this room that who have maybe are in opposition, is because we come from this history. In that it hasn't always been easy in terms of really getting the real numbers from the insurance company. And like like for myself, maybe this is being, maybe I'm speculating, but I don't think it's 47 million. I think it's much more. Yeah, but how do we get those real numbers? Because that's the game that we've been involved with politically when it has come to not just you now, a lot of insurance right throughout the society. So I think that this is why it's the apprehension, you know, on that part. But I'm very happy that you have been able to come be forthright and saying that you're willing. You know, to me, I think we do need expertise, you know, on the board, because you do have what I call special skill sets that's needed in understanding. Health insurance is a very complicated subject matter. It's not something simple. But as long as you understand what your role is on this particular board, that is what is important.
Certainly, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? If not, thank you very much. Our next governor's message is Governor's Message 626, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector gubernatorial nominee Michael Gleason for a term to expire 6/30/2015. Mr. Gleason is the Executive Director of the Archipelago and is from the Big Island. We have testimony and support from Phil Kinnicutt, Ms. Laura Smith, Goodwill Industries of Hawaii, Barry Taniguchi, KT Superstores, Lisa Maruyama, Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations, Reverend Sam Domingo, Reverend Alan Mark. Both of these individuals are from FACE. Kathleen Nielsen. Anybody else wishing to offer comment on Governor's Message 626? If not, Mr. Gleason, welcome. Please come forward and share with the committee a little bit more about your background, your interest in serving on the board, and the talents that you bring to the connector.
Thank you, Chairman Baker, and committee members for letting me come and address you today. And I just say I thank the governor for nominating me for the interim board. I've been making most of the meetings. I think I've only missed one of that board. My background is I was a teacher in public education on the Big Island at Pahoa High School for 12 years, and I've been the executive director, then the president and CEO of the Archipelago for the past 12 years. My background is helping at-risk folks in the riskiest of communities in our rural areas, and I've done this through a variety of ways: education, helping people with disabilities, I've been the chairman of the Workforce Investment Board. I've been the chairman of the president of the Hawaii Island Chamber of Commerce, and I have always endeavored to help the most at-risk populations of our communities, and I continue to do that. And I feel that that is my focus on this connector board also. I'm currently the interim board. I'm chairman of the Consumer Outreach Committee, and we are busily meeting almost weekly to try and determine ways we can best get information to and information from the consumers. We've been working with consumer groups. We've been working on the idea of an advisory committee made up of representatives from these groups and other consumers in the community. And I feel that that would be my focus on this board, is to make sure that we have input from the community, consumers, and get information to the consumers. In dealing with the populations that I've dealt with over my last 20 years here in Hawaii, I see it's going to be a very, very tough job to help educate the people who are uninsured now, and help them, guide them through this process of purchasing insurance through the exchange. I think that's going to be one of our biggest hurdles, and I will respectfully work on that situation as much as I can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Gleason. Members, any questions for Mr. Gleason? Senator Sloan.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Gleason. So you've been the chairman of the Consumer Outreach Group, is that?
Yes.
And you said you met with these different consumer groups?
Yes.
Including the ones that have been in opposition to several parts of the...
Yes.
What do you say to their testimonies this morning that they feel that they have not had adequate input to the forum?
Well, I think that through my committee, it's more of an open discussion in the last few meetings that we've had with these consumer groups, and they've been able to voice their opinions and what they, how they feel about things at that level, and we take it back to the board of directors through my committee. There's also, and I think at the last couple of board meetings it's been exercised more, but there's also been a time for, consumer, or for anybody from the public to address the board. Usually, I think we moved it to the last part of the board meeting now. Probably it's not where it should be, but I think that we're working towards getting it there.
And you heard the statements about conflicts of interest and possible ethics exemption and all that. Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, I realize and know the importance of this, and the skills of the folks that are on the insurance plans that are on the board of directors. We've worked with them, and they're very knowledgeable. They are able to answer questions that I wouldn't even think about the laws and applications. And so I would never want to take away from that advice. And I've been in opposition to them being on the board, looking at the conflict of interest, but I think that now I don't know how to resolve that. I think it's going to be in your hands to resolve whoever ends up on this board. And so I would say that I'm not really sure. I see a place for the people that represent the plans to share their expertise, whether it be on the board or advisory council. I also want to make sure that there is more input from consumers, whether it be on the board or through an advisory committee. So I'm really at a torn situation. I admire the people I work with, but see some people's concerns about the conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Do
Thank
you
you,
want
ma'am.
me to talk about the sunshine law? Or that?
Sure. Yeah, by all means.
Well, I do.
By all means.
Yeah. May I, Madam Chairman?
Sure.
I just want to, I've known you a long time, and I've had great respect for you, and I think that you're the kind of person that if you felt that there was conflict of interest, I mean, I feel confident in you that you'd say something at the board.
Not only with them, but with anybody else on
Yeah.
the board. I'm wondering about all those government people there too.
Yeah, right. What's their conflict, right?
Tuesday.
So anyway, I just wanted to thank you very much for serving. I know and I know especially the island of Hawaii. We're the ones with the biggest problems statewide. So it's really critical that we have a person such as yourself, who understands the community. And I agree with you. The challenges are out there. Not just within the board, but out there. How do you get it solved? So, thanks.
Okay. As to I'm sorry, I won't take up much more of your time. As to the sunshine, I've served on both county boards and commissions and state boards and commissions, and I've gone under the sunshine law in all of those instances. And I've been the chairman of the board for several nonprofit organizations which don't have to abide by those same sunshine rules. But I think that as part of my focus, I think transparency is also
What's your philosophy?
What we share with the public, how we share it, and
That's right.
How we receive it from the public will also be top concern. So I don't know that we need to be strictly under the sunshine rule, but I think that we have endeavored and will continue to endeavor to put some of those aspects into how we are open and transparent to the public.
Of course, you and many of the nominees do or have served on nonprofits, but there is a difference because this is a government-sanctioned organization. Thank you, Ms. Gleason. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Gleason? If not, thank you so much for your willingness to serve. Our next governor's nomination is Governor's Message 628, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector gubernatorial nominee Faye Curran for a term to expire 6/30/2014. We have testimony and support from Samuel Ishimura, Advanced Education of General Dentistry, Corey Lee Chun, Mataoshi, American Red Cross, Richard Perry, Aloha Petroleum, Alan Ueda, First Insurance Company, Stafford Kikuchi, Bank of Hawaii, Gabriel Lee, American Savings Bank, Raymond Vara, Hawaii Pacific Health, William Wilson, Hawaii Dredging, John Kotaki, Jan Parada, all these in support, Garrett Oka in support, Casey Z. Tamashiro in support, Nathan Hokama in support, Rights of Consumers Consortium in opposition. Let's see, I just went into the next nominee. We have Barbara Polk, AARP, Larry Geller, all of these are in opposition, Gail Brakey, Janet Mason, Mary Wagner, Casey Hughes, Barbara Service, TJ Davis, Fritz Fischel. Anybody else wishing to offer a comment? I don't think we have any late testimony. Ms. Curran, if you would please join us at the table and share with the committee your background and your interest in serving on the board and the qualities that you bring to the Health Connector.
Thank you and good morning. Hopefully I'm the last one. My name is Faye Curran and I have been the President and CEO of Hawaii Dental Service for the last 8 years. I was very pleased to find when the Affordable Care Act was passed that pediatric dental benefits were included in the essential health benefits package for our citizens. As many of you know, the state of children's oral health in Hawaii in certain populations is very poor. So I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for our state to improve the oral health of our children and indeed of all our citizens. HDS is a nonprofit company, our mission is, in fact, to improve the oral health of our citizens. As the CEO, I felt very strongly that dental insurance should be a part of healthcare insurance. It is much, much cheaper compared to medical benefits. And it's a part of, you know, our bodies, and it, especially for children, it's very important that they, their teeth growing well so they can eat and speak and be good members of, you know, amongst their friends and in the classroom. So not only have I tried to, and dental insurance is by far the most accurate predictor of whether a child or an adult has a healthy mouth. In addition to that business part, I'm also very fortunate that HDS, under my tenure, has really put an emphasis on serving the underserved. In other words, we will pay for folks to go to the dentist for free, and while we don't provide those services directly, we are a primary funder in the community for those that do. So we fund many of the dental service vans on the Big Island. We also have funded 2 of the clinics, one in Hilo and one on the other side, as a primary means to try to serve the folks on that island. And that island, there's a particular need. In Maui, we have done some projects with Maui Hospital as well as fairs and other. On Kauai, the same. And on Oahu, we're the primary funder of the Aloha Medical Mission Dental Clinic, as well as we provide many grants to other organizations. We put sealants, in addition, in cooperation with Waianae Coast, we put sealants on the teeth of children in the Makaha and Waianae areas. So while, yes, I do sell dental benefits, I'm also very passionate about making sure that our children and our residents are healthy. And so I hope that while certainly I can understand that there is a perception of conflicts of interest, that people can and do rise above that. I think my track record has proven that I can do that, and that, to me, that is the mission of HDS. And I'm very proud of the track record of the company under my leadership in this regard. And what do I bring to the table? Of course, we sell now through the internet, group coverage as well as individual coverage. And we're not required by law. There's no law that says you have to purchase dental insurance. If we're not really in tune with what the consumer wants, we're not going to be successful. So I think with the statistics that we have gathered through surveys, third-party surveys, you know, the public appears to be very satisfied with the service, the pricing, and the products that we have in the marketplace. We do listen to the consumer. We're concerned about the consumer. Without the consumer, we would be nowhere, and then, of course, our mission would be nowhere as well. So I think it's very important for us to balance all of these issues, and I hope that I have the opportunity to assist in that way on this board.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Sloan?
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Did the Exchange Board take up the issue of possibly buying Tesoro?
I don't think so. And I do want to tell you that while I was involved with the task force, I was not a member of the interim board.
Do you see any downside if the insurers were to be in advisory capacity only?
I think it would depend upon what that exact relationship would be, because I think it's critically important that we stand up a very robust organization, something that is effective in delivering what we want to deliver to our citizens. And that is not an easy task. There is no template. There is nothing that we can say, oh, well, here's how we're going to do it. This is the federal government plan for all states. In fact, we need to create that for our own, and I think that that's why there is the concern here, because there is no template, and this is going to be the governing board. So, you know, it's kind of, I guess, all in the doing, and it's a little bit hard. And it's just like, no matter what rules you have, I mean, I believe for ethics or conflicts of interest, in the end, it comes down to the integrity of the people that are involved.
Right. Absolutely.
And the people that are there charged
Absolutely.
with representing who they are appointed to represent. And in my case, I'm not a medical insurer. I work with medical insurers. I will work with anybody to try to get the word out there. I believe, represent all of the ancillary insurers, people like the pharmacy people, the vision people, the dental, all of us, because we want to make sure that there's choice for the consumer, that there's not one bundled product, that there's choice, and not only that, that there is pricing transparency as well. So that's something that, you know, it's a little bit larger than the dental role, but I'm a big believer in it's the consumer's money. That's how the consumers vote. They need to be heard.
During the interim board's meetings and all, did an issue or issues ever come up where they said, hey, you know, these are potential problems with the law. We're going to tell or suggest to the legislature that they make amendments? Was that ever?
I was not on the interim board.
Oh, you were not?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You've heard the discussion this morning, though, by people that feel that they have not had access to board meetings and board decisions prior to them being made. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I always feel not good when that happens. I think I'm a very collaborative person, and I think one of my skills is that, you know, I do like to listen. I do like to hear everyone. Because I was not on the interim board, it's a little bit hard for me to comment on that experience.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No.
If not, thank you, Ms. Curran.
Thank you.
Our last nominee for this morning, I think I indicated that we had one governor's message withdrawn. We had another one substituted. That governor's message, I think, is scheduled for April 3rd, 4th. That governor's message is for Hardy Spore with Papaolo Lokahi. Because of our posting requirements, we couldn't include him on this one. So the last nominee for today's agenda is Governor's Message 643, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Directors of the Hawaii Health Connector gubernatorial nominee Clementina Sarah Ulep for a term to expire 6/30/2014. And we have testimony and support from FACE, Reverend Domingo, from, come on.
Good morning, Chair and members, esteemed members of the committee. I wouldn't pass up this opportunity because FACE is very, very proud to support the nomination of Dr. Clementina Sarah Ulep. She has been a member since our inception as an organization, an active member and leader at her parish, Our Lady of Mount Catholic Church in Kalihi Valley, which I also not belong to, but I was a part of, and very much an active leader in FACE itself, being our former president at one time. And she has a voice that speaks truth to power, a voice that is concerned and principled and passionate, and indeed she will be an active member of this board, and one that many of us will be proud of, and very much in support of the people of Hawaii. And so that in that respect, we support her nomination fully. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have another FACE. This is from FACE Maui, Monsignor Terrence Watanabe, Father Terry. We also have support from Reverend Alan Mark, State President of FACE, the past President of Oahu FACE, Reverend Bob Nakata, Ms. June Takeno, FACE Unite, KUMC. We have support from Luann Long, Juliet Raimundo, Courtney Midla, is that the right last name? Milda, okay. Typos in my list. Rosalyn Pasqua and Eldon Wegner. Anyone else here wishing to offer comment on Governor's Message 643? If not, Dr. Sarah Ulep, if you would please join us at the table. And I think most folks call you Clem, right?
Yeah, Clem.
So Clem, if you could share with the committee a little bit about your background and your interest in serving on the Connector Board and some of the skill sets that you bring to the board.
Sure. Good morning, Senator Baker and committee members. I am honored to be nominated as a member of the Hawaii Health Connector Committee. And I do bring the experience of being both as a community member as well as a healthcare provider. So as a nurse educator for over 18 years, a registered nurse for over 29 years, and a leader for over 15 years with Faith Action for Community Equity, or FACE, an interfaith organization. I am aware of the issues that the consumers, community members, ordinary citizens like myself face. So I believe to that extent that I am qualified to serve on the board, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, members, any questions? If not, thank you so much, Clem, for your willingness to serve. I think you do add a great dimension to the board, and when we get to that point, we'll be looking to advise and consent. There was one, when I went over, you can go ahead and sit back in the public. When we went over one of the governor's messages, second one, Governor's Message 620, Robert Hirakawa, I didn't notice that Nani Maderas, who works with Hawaii Primary Care Association, was in the audience, and I wanted to, since Mr. Hirakawa is not here, I wanted to give her an opportunity to stand in for him and support his nomination if that's, if I understand the note I was sent.
I apologize, I got confused earlier. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to make a few comments regarding Robert's confirmation, his nomination. I'd like to read some excerpts from a letter that he had submitted in his absence to be read for all of you, which I think you actually already have a copy of, and the benefit of the audience. Dear Senator Baker, I want to be a member of the permanent board so that I can continue to contribute to the planning, execution, and evaluation of the Hawaii Health Connector so that it remains consumer-centered. The HHC must provide a transparent mechanism that seamlessly and easily allows consumers to compare and contrast and choose appropriate qualified health plans, and allows them to find and apply for subsidies where appropriate. HHC's success will be based on its impact on increasing consumer access to quality health plans and reducing the number of uninsured without negatively impacting the Hawaii Prepaid Health Care Act. As a board member, I have a fiduciary duty to see that the HHC, 1, remains true to its stated goals and missions, 2, is compliant and transparent in all aspects of its operations at all times, and 3, is accountable to its users. I have been involved in Hawaii's healthcare system for over 25 years, either as a provider, a public health professional, and most recently, an active participant with Hawaii's community health centers. I believe this provides me with the insight and experience necessary to offer a very important perspective on the HHC board, the positive impact the connector can have in mitigating the health disparities and inequities that continue to exist in Hawaii, especially amongst our vulnerable populations, uninsured and underinsured. The Hawaii Primary Care Association strongly supports Robert's nomination to the board, and we do so because of many of the things that he has stated in his letter here. We have been fortunate enough to observe the work of the task force preceding the interim board and the work of the interim board over the past few months. I would also like to disclose that Hawaii Primary Care Association was the association responsible for the 2 bills that were introduced this legislative session dealing with the conflict of interest provisions. In terms of some of the questions that have been asked today and the points that have been made, I think that Robert's character has been remarkable in his presence on the board, his attempts to increase transparency, his attempts to increase the opportunities for public comment and public participation, and we commend him for that, in addition to your previous nominee, Mike Leeson, who is the chair of the Outreach Committee. I would like to mention that both of them have put themselves on the line in board meetings by speaking up, by being honest, by even voting no on recommendations that they did not agree with the majority of the board on. And in terms of having the courage to step forward in a nonprofit situation and be the person and not the organization that you work for, he has definitely demonstrated the ability to do that. I'd also like to speak with regard to some of those questions dealing with conflict of interest. A previous nominee had mentioned one question that she did speak with the Hawaii Primary Care Association regarding some of the concerns that persons who have submitted testimony in opposition today brought up, and that would be Joan Daniele. And she is correct, and I am the person that she spoke with. I want to bring it up because I think it speaks to a very important part of the heart of this problem. I think that Joan should be commended for coming to us. She is the only nominee who did. She came to us and she asked, I don't know exactly what your concerns are. I want to know more. Can we talk? Can you explain it? And in terms of community health centers, and I guess voices and concerns of our consumers and patients being heard, that's the kind of conversation we want to have. And I commend Joan for doing that. She's earned my trust. When she sat here and answered your question and said, I will absolutely make sure I declare if there's a conflict, I believe her. And I hope that she is an example that many other nominees will strive to live up to today.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Nani.
Chair.
Members, we are at the end of the agenda. May we take the vote on these nominees?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go into decision making. And with the committee's permission, I will do as we've done on all of the other boards and commissions and recommend that we advise and consent to all of them and take them in one vote. Discussion.
Sure.
Yes, Senator Galataria.
Thank you very much, mahalo, and mahalo to everyone for coming here today. I personally, Madam Chair, needed the full measure of our discussion here to come to my final decision. And it appeared to me that there were a couple of moving parts. Obviously, the conflict of interest issue is of great concern, and it should remain of great concern, but it's not anything that we will be addressing today. It is being addressed in current legislation, and if the legislature does intend to address it in a future deliberations, that's where it's going to be. So I needed to be very clear on what it was that I was being asked to decide on today. And it is the appointments and the nominations of those in front of us as dictated to us by law. Now, whether that changes in a future discussion or in future legislative action is yet to be seen. But today, for myself, I'll be voting on the qualifications of those who sit in front of us today. And it was imperative that they extend to us a level of integrity that we can be confident going forward with. Secondly, it was important for us to see those others on the board who are not opposed, because they will be the ones who will call the others into question if need be. However, in going forward, I feel confident that those who are and have been opposed in this process have indicated to me that they, if need be, will vote against the interests of their companies, which I feel is important, at least going forward, because we may change things. We may change the makeup of this connector group in the future, but right now we're in real time, and they have persuaded me that they will do right by their appointment. So, I know it may disappoint those who might have come to see me, but I'll be voting in the affirmative with you.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? If not-
Comments?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is one of those areas where it's difficult for senators to vote because there are a number of considerations, some of which have been brought up. And it certainly is true that the hearing today, which was extensive, I think was beneficial for all of us. I want to thank all the people that came, the nominees and people, supporters and opponents. I don't think there's any question about the character, the integrity, the experience of any one of these nominees. No question whatsoever. But in full transparency, I don't think there's anybody in the room that doesn't know, but I have opposed the Obamacare Act and will continue to do so vigorously. I opposed Act 205 last year and will continue to do so vigorously. I think that the bill, both the federal bill and the local bill, they are flawed, and they contain elements that both are harmful to certain segments of the community and are also unintended consequences. And I've had meetings with several of the nominees, and they answered all my questions, and I have no problem with that. But the question was brought up, and I did ask Ms. Deisman about the Prepaid Healthcare Advisory Council. I remember that quite well. And to say that one or two people on the council don't have much impact when you have a large council or working group is really not true, because all of us who've been on different boards and all, we look to certain people for both their expertise and their knowledge and all of that. I think the real problem, there's no question about the diversity of the board. I would have hoped that we would have deferred these nominations until we see what happens with the legislation, because clearly, even though, as the chair says, I mean, it's absolutely the case before us today are the nominees only. But the nominees to what? The nominees to a board which may, and in fact, many of us believe should be, amended and changed. And so to go ahead with that, I think, is a problem. I have been on the losing side or the minority side more times than anybody in this room. And so I know what it is when people come and they feel that they don't have a voice, or that they have tried to, even with an interim board, tried to have input and they haven't gotten it. I also find myself in an interesting position, Madam Chair, because this whole process here has been politicized. I find the Americans for Democratic Action and the Democratic Party, the progressives of the Democrats, Mr. Castillo, who gave me his card, which says right on the front of it, big letters, Democrat. This should not be a partisan issue. It's health care, and it's important to all of us, and it's a very important issue. But I'm impressed with the breadth and diversity of the opposition, if not anything more than their concerns, which should be addressed before we go ahead. We're always, it seems that we're in a rush. And there is no rush. There's no reason that we have to do this. But because we're voting on this today, and because of all of the things I said, I will be voting no. Thank you, Madam
Senator.
Chair.
I don't imagine that you would be voting yes if we put it off till the end of session. But nevertheless, Senator Nishihara, did you want to make a comment?
You know, I think there's no question that people before us are people with a high degree of personal integrity. And I think even for those who are opposing them also, I don't question your integrity as well. But, you know, it's always been my view that when faced with tough issues, a person's integrity is of paramount importance. And the words we speak and the words we say and the things we believe sometimes will trump what's maybe in our own personal self-interest. And I have no doubt that the people standing before us who are up for as nominees do have that character, because at the end of the day, all we have is what we value as our character and what we believe is the central core of who we are. So I have no doubt that, having seen and spoken to these people, that they will do the right thing, and regardless of where they are employed, they will do the best in the interest of the citizens of this state. And so I will be voting yes and in favor of these nominees. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any other comments? If not, it appears we're ready for the vote. The chair recommends that we advise and consent to these governor's messages. Governor's message 618, 620, 621, 622, 623, 624, 625, 626, 628, and 643. Chair votes aye. And Senator Taniguchi, will you take the vote for the rest of the committee? The recommendation is to advise and consent.
Recommendation by the chair is to advise and consent on all the aforementioned governor's messages. I believe chair is going aye on all of them. Vice chair is going aye on all of them. Senator Galatario?
Aye.
Senator Green is excused. Senator Nishihara?
Aye.
Senator Solomon?
Aye on all of them.
Senator Sloan?
No.
On all of them?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank the service of the interim board and acknowledge the service of the new members who will be taking office as well. Thank all of you for your comments and expect to see all of you at board meetings to continue to offer your input, help be a monitor. And as we go forward, I think if we all work together with the insurance commissioner and the other members on the board, we will find that we can come up with a health connector that's going to serve the best interests of all the people of Hawaii. That is the committee's hope and belief, and we will be watching as well. We are adjourned.